Hi, welcome back to the Youth and Politics podcast. My name is Carrera,
And my name's Cody.
and today we are here with
I'm Cass.
lovely stuff. Cody, do you wanna...
Yes, so today we're going to be talking about all things the Green Party, and obviously they're going for a very exciting time, the leadership contest. Um, Cass, can you let the viewers know what's going on with the leadership so far? Because obviously they're in there voting.
Yes, so the leadership campaign officially started around June, July, but unofficially has been going on since the beginning of May, when unexpectedly Zach Polanski, the current deputy leader, announced that he would be running as to be the next leader of the Green Party. Um, and this year will just be a 1 year term, unlike the usual 2 year terms for Green Party leaders and deputy leaders, because there's a deputy leadership election going on as well. Because there was meant to be one last year, but it was delayed for the general election. And as such, there's sort of this shake-up for the Green establishment, so to speak, where Zach Polanski is challenging Adrian Ramsey, who is now running for co-leader with Ellie Childs. Adrian Ramsey is one of the current co-leaders, the other being Carla Denyer, who has said that she doesn't want to stand for leader again. Both he and Ellie Childs are MPs. Zach Polanski is not. He's a member of the London Assembly and sort of is trying to take the party in a more left populist route. And then Ellie and Adrian have been described as eco-centrists. They are still very much on the left, but they're more what you currently associate with the Green Party's messaging strategy. They want to stick with that rather than sort of change it.
Lovely stuff. And just for maybe the viewers that probably don't know a lot about the Green Party, could you summarize or like briefly kind of
Yeah.
like explain what the party advocates for and maybe a few of their policies?
Yes, absolutely. So the one that everyone knows about with the Green Party is the environment, and it was founded with that purpose. But and so I evidently probably don't need to go into much about that. But in regards to their other policies, they take a sort of eco-socialist route. Um, so, for example, they in the most recent general election in their manifesto was a 10-to-1 pay ratio between the highest paid member of an organization and the lowest paid. Currently, they're being very outspoken about introducing a wealth tax of 1% on assets over £10 million and 2% on assets over £1 billion. Um, they also want an increase in number of social homes, rather than just regular privately owned housing, so that people have more affordable homes. Um, they they advocate for a very wide base of things. And if you take, for example, what people are expecting of Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana's new party,
Mhm.
a lot of conversation within the Green Party revolves around how what they're saying is pretty much what we've been saying the whole time.
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
something going on with how effectively we're getting that across.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. I
sorry.
feel like
Thank
we just nodded our heads on, but there's so much there. But like I feel like I just learned so much
Yeah.
like that I didn't know about the Green Pie before.
Beforehand.
Like
Yeah.
which is very nice because I feel like having those smaller like pies also just give that recognition. I don't know if you agree, Gus.
Absolutely. And there are a lot of issues that I can talk about with our current system of democracy in this country. Um, but the fact that smaller parties exist is absolutely a good thing. And smaller parties in any system are good because there'll always be the big main few. And so it's up to the smaller ones to sort of make sure things don't stagnate.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the smaller parties also like, because not everyone will always necessarily agree with what the bigger parties are saying. So by having the smaller
Yeah.
parties, I think it caters to everyone. So everyone has something that they can
Yeah,
agree with and align themselves with. So I love it. It's amazing.
yeah. Like, and I feel like that this country's had the two-party system for quite a long time now,
Mm,
and obviously we're seeing so many more parties like
Emerge.
emerge. It's really like interesting to see how like because I do feel like it's like a business. You're filling in that gap as well. There's so many people just like not like interested with the two major parties. They want there's somewhere that needs to fill a gap with many places. Like for example, you saw the far right reform filled that gap, and then obviously the left socialist idea. Like obviously, there's so many parties there that fill those gaps. What is your opinion on the future for the Green Party, Cass?
I think with this leadership election, the future is currently very uncertain in that it's going to be a very big inflection point, and this leadership election will determine where we go from here. And I think it's a very exciting time for the left in British politics, both because as a supporter of Zach Polanski in this leadership election, I think that he can elevate the Green Party to a new level. For example, what he often says is that in the general election, we came second, or the Green Party rather came second, in 39 constituencies that were won by Labour. That's if the Greens were to clearly state a left-wing message. That's 39 extra constituencies that we could win. And then equally, there's the new Corbyn Sultana party, Your Party. That's obviously not what it's going to end up being called. And there is obviously uncertainty around what exactly that will be, but there is some talk of a Your Party, Green Party pact of some kind, which would, according to the current polling on how people would vote with the existence of Your Party, that would be the second largest electoral force behind reform. And as such, I'm very excited for the left of politics generally, but also for the Green Party, because I think we can go in a new direction. And the thing with the leadership election is the Green Party policy is not determined by the leaders. Nothing will change about our policy when we get the results on the 2nd of September. The leadership is just a comms issue. All Green Party policy is decided on by the members.
That's really interesting, actually. I didn't know about the Green Party and Your Party, like the coalition. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool. And I think a lot of young people would probably be on board with that. Because obviously, like we've spoken about this to some of our other guests as well. But there's been a lot of support for Your Party, and I know that like in the general election last year, me and my friends were talking about it, and so many people were like, "Yeah, no, but Green or Lib Dem and Green,
Yeah.
Lib Dem," and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so like there is definitely a rise in the smaller parties. So I think Your Party and Green Party coming together, that would be a massive power play, I think.
I feel like if they played that smart, like because I know Labour and the Cooperative Party, like they give so every time you stand as a Labour MP, you also kind of are given the option to stand as a Labour and Cooperative member. Which if Your Party and the Green Party did the similar option where you stand for both, I don't know. What do you think?
Absolutely. That's something that I've been talking to some people about. And in sort of the media discussion around this, there's the term electoral pact is used a lot. In some constituencies, Your Party would stand aside, in some constituencies, the Greens would stand aside. I'm not sure how likely that will end up being, but what I hope for in particular is to have candidates on joint tickets, because then there will be some people who vote for Your Party who, for whatever reason, would never in their life decide to vote for a Green Party candidate, and vice versa. So if we were to prioritize joint tickets, I reckon that could work quite well, and that would be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I agree. That would be really, really interesting. I'm actually really curious to see what happens now in the future, in the near future, especially, because there's so much momentum with everything.
Yeah, I feel like another thing that like affects British politics is like a lot of the two major parties. Obviously, I think in the past few years, to many young people, but some would say that they've lost the trust of the young people, especially we're seeing that a lot right now. And obviously my question to you, Cass, would be like,
Yeah.
in the next general election, how do you think young people will go, like from your perspective, like your opinion right now?
Um, well, this is something I find really interesting because obviously, a lot of the rest of Europe is having a similar um, political shake-up to us, shall we say, with a lot of people lurching towards the far right in the absence of the major parties being in any way reasonable. And obviously, the far right is not the solution to that. But in most of mainland Europe, young people tend to go more towards the right and the older generations towards the establishment or the left. But in this country, interestingly, it seems to be the other way around. If you take the 18 to 24-year-olds, the most popular party is Labour, just about. It varies. Then typically the Greens and Lib Dems, then Reform, then Conservatives. And then with 16 to 18 or 16 and 17-year-olds, it's again Labour and then Reform and Greens trade hands a bit, and then Lib Dems. So I think in terms of the direction of young people in this country, we seem to be more left-wing than young people in the rest of Europe. With the case of 16 and 17-year-olds, perhaps equally either way, though it's a question of I'm stumbling over my words now. Though with the 16 and 17-year-olds who want to vote Labour, it would be a question of why do they? Which party would be able to appeal to them more there? I think if we look at policy, Green Party policy appeals more to young people. If we look at messaging right now, unfortunately, Reform messaging appeals more to young people. But assuming the Greens can get their messaging sorted out in the coming years, then I think there will be a big swing towards Greens amongst young people, which there already is. But then also with your party, all the hypothetical polling has had that as the most popular party for everyone aged 16 to 25.
Yeah.
That has been quite a common thing.
Yes.
But yeah, you mentioned like in the rest of mainland Europe, it tends to people tend to sway the opposite of. Wait, let me phrase this question properly. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you mentioned that the younger generations and the older generations sway the opposite ways they do in England in the rest of mainland Europe. Why do you think that is?
That's a really interesting question.
Sorry.
No, it's really interesting to think about, and I think Germany is an interesting place to look at for this. So you have obviously the rise of the AfD there, and the CDU is the Christian Democratic Union. For the unaware, they're a sort of Christian Democratic centre-right party that the establishment centre-right party. They are sort of the ones who are holding back the AfD, and are very popular all across the country. But if you look at the map of Germany, there's a very clear line where the AfD are winning and where the CDU are winning. And where the AfD are winning is exactly where East Germany was. Where the CDU are winning is where West Germany was. Shockingly exactly.
Oh my gosh.
Even in Berlin,
yeah.
West Berlin goes to the CDU, but then East Berlin goes to Die Linke, which is their sort of equivalent of what your party will end up being. And I think the reason for this is there is throughout Europe a cultural memory of sort of Stalinist communism.
Yeah.
And young people have obviously grown up a lot hearing about that. And as such, want to do the opposite. So, and this isn't a type of messaging that really had as much foothold by my understanding in the UK, which typically as well has been a more sort of socialist country than a lot of countries in Europe, with the exception of, for example, Portugal, which had its democracy established by socialists in the 70s. But with Germany, I think that they understandably are wary culturally of anything that sounds like the USSR. And as such, when the establishment to them is failing, they go to what isn't communism. And the AfD is that. However, if you look at Berlin, where there is Die Linke winning, they obviously will also be unhappy with the establishment. They also will be unhappy with the USSR's type of communism, but that being an area where I expect universities are, I imagine there is more a sense of, well, this is where the USSR went wrong. This might sound similar, but it is a very different thing. And of course, there is a decrease in higher education throughout the world, or going to higher education throughout the world, and people who go to higher education are more likely to vote on the left.
That's really interesting, actually, because I just finished my A-level history and we studied Stalin's communist Russia and everything. And I think that's really interesting because I've never actually made the link in my head that that's maybe why people go the other way, because they're just trying to avoid a whole situation like that again. I've never really put two and two together with that.
Yeah.
There will, of course, be other reasons as well. There's the stoking of constant anti-immigrant rhetoric. And that's why people gravitate towards the anti-immigration parties. But the more interesting question to me is, why does that cut through so much more amongst young people in mainland Europe than it does here? Because we have the same messaging going on. And that is messaging that appeals to people. But why the stark difference? And I think the presentation of the parties in mainland Europe being so separate to things that ruined the country in those countries in the past couple hundred years is part of that.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. I think there's a lot to consider. But yeah, no, it is really interesting to try and analyze why it's different in
it's so complicated in some cases, but then in some others it's really not. I think obviously when you put two and two together, it really makes much more sense. What I've always wondered personally is this, we were just talking about the swing between obviously what I've always noticed as well is the American swing between the UK, because obviously for me from the past it always seems like it's always if Labour's in power, then it's always the Republicans in power in there, or if it's the Democrats in America, then it's always Conservatives over here. I don't know why. I've just always seen that. It may just be the ones I've been looking at, but what do you think of that twist between America and the UK?
I've never really thought about it before, but coming to think of it, you are, I think, completely right.
Yeah.
That's really strange.
Yeah.
There was, of course, a sort of break from that in 2016, where we had the Conservatives and they ended up with Trump. But for the rest, yeah, that's a very strange pattern, at least since 1997. I don't think I can really explain the Democrat-Conservative link, but I think there's something interesting to be said with the Labour-Republican link of how since 1997, when we've had a Labour government, it's been a new Labour government, which has ended up with things like the Iraq War, in which we were very aligned with what the Republicans were saying, unfortunately. And then now, for example, we have the genocide in Gaza, in which the government says that they're against it, but of course we have all of the reports of what's going on, what's actually going on. Maybe that kind of thing has something to do with it. I'm not sure.
I think there is like a high possibility that maybe like everything that's happening in the rest of the world is contributing to
Yes.
link.
Yeah.
I think definitely 100%.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah, I mean,
that's interesting.
moving on to something a little bit more like also interesting. Obviously we know you're like an activist and like everyone's got their type of social action, like because everyone is so great and doing things. Do you mind sharing like your story of like how you got involved in activism? Because obviously we're both I Will ambassadors. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I've sort of enjoyed helping people for as long as I can remember. When I was in primary school, I remember being an e-safety officer where we would do an assembly every so often about staying safe online, and then every so often in lessons bug people about using computers correctly. And it wasn't much, but I think that's what started me down this road. Then in secondary school, I became a student ambassador, and then eventually deputy head student. And I think that's what really got me going, because there was a lot of issues. As much as I loved that school, there were a lot of issues with it. And very often, I would end up at the head teacher's office door and then talk to him about these issues. And then he'd be excellent at making me feel like I was being listened to, and then nothing would be done about it. And that's an experience that I think a lot of young people can relate to. And equally, a lot of people from other backgrounds as well, even if they aren't young people. The sort of issue of, if you're in some way below me, then I don't necessarily have to listen to you, is universal. And that really frustrated me. So then in college, during the Freshers' Fair, there was a stall for reference, I live in Suffolk and went to college in the Suffolk county town, Ipswich. And there was a stall there for someone who works for an organisation called Youth Switching on Ipswich. Youth Switching on Ipswich is a subset of Volunteering Matters, which itself is part of the I Will movement. And their whole thing of getting young people into decision making, enfranchising young people, was exactly what I had been looking for. And Youth Switching on Ipswich sort of is the on the ground aspect of going around Ipswich, going into meetings, hosting events like hackathons, and making sure there are decision makers in the room with young people and having change come from that. And that was absolutely amazing. And then since then, I have been part of Youth Switching on Ipswich, helping facilitate those events. Then throughout college as well, I ended up becoming a student ambassador. I helped organize the college's first Pride event. There was a big sort of how do I refer to this? Sort of big statement for the 16 days of activism against violence against women and girls in November of 2024 that I helped organize, where we got a load of people out of lessons, got a drone with a camera on, and then organized them all in a car park to say no more. And then took a picture of that and posted it on social media and spoke about it a little bit. And so I did sort of the big, flashy things in the college. And that was fantastic. And they were very helpful with that. They were very enthusiastic about that. But then there were the not as big, not as flashy things that involved actual change within the college that I thought students should have a say, and a lot of students thought students should have a say, and a lot of teachers thought students should have a say. But certain people quite high up in the trust thought that they were the only ones who needed to have a say in it. For people who live nearby, you may remember hearing on the news about a school that had a very big, or hearing through social media even, about a college that had very big outrage within it about a timetable change, because the structure of the day and week has completely changed from how it was when I was in year 12, and students were not consulted on it. And for multiple months, people were protesting it. They were arguing against it. They made it out like we were being listened to. There was a meeting that was had with student ambassadors, where we were told we would be consulted on this. The consultation was, which day do you want off, rather than what do you think of the whole timetable. And that just brought me back to high school. And we're going to make it seem like we're doing something good, but in reality, you don't really have much of a choice. And that was frustrating. And when I get frustrated, I like to use that frustration for something good. And so my goal is to carry that frustration with me, and the frustration of my issues with British democracy, and my frustration with the direction the world is going. And I want to use that to help enfranchise people. And the way you do that is what I Will is doing, what Youth Switching on Ipswich is doing. But also the way you do that is by building community and fostering solidarity. And so I've begun working with the people within my town to build a proper youth space where young people can build community. It's why I donate to a variety of campaigns to build solidarity, why I attend protests, for example, for Palestine, though I haven't yet, though I intend to. It's my social action is about enfranchisement. The three words I use are solidarity, community, and democracy. And to me, that doesn't come from one thing. I'm interested in doing anything and everything that builds on each of those, because they all come hand in hand, and they're all important for a healthy society.
I completely agree. I think your journey is absolutely
Yeah,
amazing, really, really
like, literally,
inspiring,
like-
really amazing. And I think what you said about how, like, especially in schools, like you'll be talking to like your head teachers or like people who like have the like ability to actually change how things are in school, and it just seems like they're listening to you, but it's like talking to a brick wall sometimes. That is definitely universal.
Like, first of all, I mean, that's so inspiring. Like, that is the most inspiring story I think I've heard the past few days.
Oh, thank you.
Also, what like got me as well is that, like you said, the small things
Yeah.
are the ones that change, and that's what I really do believe in. Like, I care so much locally, and that's what I feel like everyone should do. Because if you start local, you then build national. If everyone did that, everyone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's the whole ethos behind having a grassroots movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I 100% agree. Really, really cool.
Yes.
Do you have anything you would like to ask us?
Oh, well, I would like to ask you both about your journeys. Everyone's story is interesting, and everyone's story is important. So.
Yeah, so mine started very similar, kind of, not as like amazing, but like, so I was started off as a student councillor at a very young age, and then when I moved to secondary school, I had a bit of a break because I felt like nothing was actually really helping that I was doing. I didn't think like I was making an improvement until I got a letter one day about joining the local youth council. And then I turned around to my friend, I was like, oh, should I do this? And like my friend persuaded me to give it a go. I won. And then I loved it. It literally changed me youth council, and then obviously that led to me doing 2 consecutive terms, which like I've stayed on youth council for so long because it truly means something doing local change. Um, During being a youth council my first term, I became an activist for Young Minds, campaigning against ending exam stress, about like SATs and GCSEs. There's also like I then joined Bite Back with Carrera, where we're campaigning to end like junk food advertisement on our high streets and like protecting the health of a generation, and like lobbying MPs and stuff like that to actually do what they said because a lot of it was in their Labour manifesto. A story for another day. Um, and then obviously I've joined I Will because all of this stuff I just kind of felt like you, I needed somewhere to like network with loads of people that are doing the similar stuff to me and like just trying to improve everyone.
My journey's kind of similar. It's kind of similar. But I used to live in India, so I did primary school there and I was there until like mid-year nine. And when I was in secondary, obviously in primary I did like the little school
Mm,
council stuff. And then when I came to secondary, I was also a part of like the school and house council and everything. And then in India we did a lot of like MUNs and
mm,
like we had there was like a thing called FEBISIA, which is like the Federation of British International Schools in Asia. So we'd all get together and we'd do so many events together, and it was just so cool because I get to meet so many cool people. And I came to England and I was like, I told my friend, I was like, I can't find anything like that here. Please tell me there's something. And then she introduced me to the local youth council, which I then joined. And then that it was a youth cabinet when I joined. It switched to the youth council. And then I ran for chair on the local youth council and I won, which is really exciting. So I got to serve out a term as chair. Um, and then yeah, like Cody, I joined Bite Back as well. Done some stuff with them. It's really cool. I absolutely love it. And then yeah, Cody asked me if I would be interested in co-hosting this podcast with him, and I was like, yeah, 100%. It's so cool. And yeah, that's kind of my journey, I guess. Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
two don't think your stories are incredible and inspiring, you need to look up what those words mean, I think.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's
Yeah.
been lovely having you.
Yeah.
And thank you. I
Not as
literally
well.
it was like a history lesson for me.
Yeah, I really
I've
enjoyed.
I've gone away learning so much.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely amazing.
but thank you so much, and
I'll
yeah,
see you next time.
yes,
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank you.
much.
thank
Bye.
you. Bye.